Hey everybody, I'm Eugene Driscoll. Welcome to a very special episode of Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy podcast. Just arrived from the streets of Ansonia. At least right now, you were just outside.
The mean streets.
Is our guest today, Seymour First Selectman Kurt Miller.
Always a pleasure to be here with you, fine gentlemen.
Yeah, we really do appreciate you coming down here. Then over on the other side of me is Ethan Fry. I don't know if Ethan can even be seen.
Yeah, I just cut into the shot for a second.
Okay, so
I'm monitoring the.
Am I on camera or did I waste? Should I not have wore a tie?
You are completely on camera.
So good thing I wore a tie then.
Ethan's got to speak up probably if he speaks. But really, Ethan today is going to be our camera person and our producer, essentially. Make sure we stay online and all that kind of good stuff. So, like I said, our guest today is Seymour First Selectman Kurt Miller.
Can I add something about our producer? Or am I cutting you off?
Let's go. I mean, I only had, 8 pages of stuff. Let's go. We have plenty of time.
No, I was in the city of Shelton and I saw this person that kept running by me. That seemed to be doing laps.
From the police? Oh.
And it was our runner friend over there. He's getting himself into shape. He was concerned about some holiday pounds he had put on. And he was out running hard in the cold.
Compensating for the eggnog and beer, pretty much. A lot of work to do still.
I was proud of him out there working hard.
Thank you.
It's had no effect on his personality. He's still pleasant. Also joining us in a couple of minutes, in about 9 minutes, will be Jennifer Magri. Am I saying her name correctly?
Yes.
All right. Just want to make sure. And she is the relatively new chairperson of the Seymour Board of Education.
Yeah, longtime member. Just became the chair in this year.
So we have a lot of Seymour news to talk about in the next hour or so. If you have any questions for the First Selectman, anything at all related to the town of Seymour, feel free to post your question in the comments section. What we'll do is after Jen calls in, we're going to talk about some Seymour school budget specific issues. And then when we're done with that, we'll look to see if there are any questions you have, and we'll pose them to the First Selectman. So I wanted to talk about first the Seymour school budget with the First Selectman and Jen Magri when she calls in at 12:10. Then I wanted to answer your questions, or to have the First Selectman answer your questions that you can post right now. And then I wanted to sort of open it up and maybe talk about State Rep Linda Gentile retiring, and then anything at all that comes our way. We'll see how much time we have.
Absolutely.
So before we do all that, I just wanted to take care of some basic housekeeping, if you will. First, a programming note. We are streaming this right now on Facebook Live, but we'll also be publishing this as a traditional podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Libsyn as well. And then second, totally unrelated but important nonetheless, if you purchased a Valley Indy t-shirt, I don't think you did.
No, I did not.
Kurt did not support our fundraiser. But
you didn't have sizes. I'm an extra large. Let's not kid ourselves.
I've got 3 triple XLs coming to my house. I can show you the email. So okay. So, Kurt's a very good politician.
Fake news.
If you ordered a t-shirt, unlike Mr. Miller here, but there's 52 of you who did, and thank you so much for that, you should check your email. You're going to have an email saying that your shirt has been shipped. Once you get that email, I got mine this morning, literally overnight. You can track your package, and you can track it by using the link that Ethan is going to drop in the comment section right now. We raised about $500 through t-shirt sales from this third party called Custom Inc., which is awesome. So your shirts are on the way. And if you have any problems with your shipment, or you think we're scamming you, call 844-537-3998. That's 844-537-3998. That is Custom Inc. And if you call them, they actually pick up the phone. And then thirdly, I just wanted to say that's in our post as it is right now on Facebook. We are sponsored this year by valleygivesback.org. That is a new initiative from the Valley Community Foundation. And I just wanted to read a quick message and thank valleygivesback.org for their sponsorship of this podcast. Adding a Valley charity to your estate plan creates a lasting legacy that tells future generations what causes matter to you. Your action will inspire others to follow your lead and make a difference. With a planned gift, you have the power to impact the community forever without affecting your current lifestyle. Learn more at valleygivesback.org. Plan now, give later, and impact tomorrow at valleygivesback.org. All right, now on with the show.
Wow, that was well done.
I know, I'm nervous.
I mean, dramatic pauses.
I feel like we're in the big time.
That was well produced.
Thank you.
That was a nice
Thank
job.
you very much. I promoted this on Twitter by saying, if you're into like news shows with less production value than cable access, this is the news program.
This is the meat and the potatoes. There's no flash here. It's all information.
No. Pure American local news.
Firsthand.
So first I wanted to talk about Seymour's budget, and I guess the school budget specifically. And again, Jen Magri from the Board of Ed will be calling in a few minutes. And I've exchanged emails with the Seymour School Superintendent, Mike Wilson. He's out of town, I guess, or maybe he's at a conference.
Yep.
So he couldn't come on, but we've exchanged emails to talk about, I mean, there were layoffs last month within the school district.
Mm-hmm.
And so first I thought if you could just explain, and obviously the state budget process last year was unlike anything that I've ever seen.
Correct.
I haven't been in Connecticut that long. If you could sort of give us a rundown of what got us to last month's meeting where the Seymour Board of Ed laid people off.
The current fiscal year that we're in for the state of Connecticut, when we created our budget for fiscal year 18, which is what we're in now, we used a certain set of numbers that were provided to us by the state. At that point, if you remember, because we talked about this a lot,
and this was a budget approved by voters last May.
Yep. Building that budget, we put certain assumptions in that there would be cuts in state funding. And remember, we talked about Seymour was prepared to be able to handle somewhere between $800,000 or $900,000 in cuts.
With Seymour, both the town and the school district?
Right, so just when I say Seymour, I mean globally, both budgets. Seymour received the 18th largest cut in state funding. So we received cuts of about $1.9 million to date, and I expect there's going to be more cuts coming down the road. So we had about $1 million shortfall that we were unprepared for. Couple that with special education costs, and we can do the best job we possibly can in estimating those. But as special needs students move around, from place to place with their parents, just normal moving around of families, we become responsible for that child as soon as he or she moves into the district. We were running somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 over budget just on special need costs. So we had to make some decisions as to how we would close these holes.
And then special education, I'm sure people probably know this if you're taking the time to watch this podcast, but special education costs can become very expensive because if a child needs to be sent outside the school district,
correct,
because the school cannot educate them properly,
right,
due to challenges or what have you, the school district has to pay for transportation and tuition, and that's pretty much what drives up that cost, and it's hard to predict from year to year.
Right, and every child in Connecticut deserves the right to have the best education that they can get. So some of these kids, unfortunately, we can't educate within our own school, so we do need to send them out, and it could get expenses upwards of $100,000 or more per student. So while we would, you try to plan and you try to budget for these, if you get 4 or 5 that come in, move into Seymour in a year that are unexpected, it puts a huge burden on the budget. So
and there's a whole larger issue of the federal government not doing enough to reimburse towns for those expenses.
Absolutely,
but I guess that's probably, I don't mean to throw you off track.
No, but that leads to it. I mean, that burden falls entirely then on the taxpayers of the town of Seymour, and that burden puts stress on other parts of the budget. And when you look at operations like we have, I mean, our biggest costs every year for most towns and cities is the cost of our employees, because we have so many of them, particularly the Board of Education, and I'm sure Jen can elaborate on the numbers a little bit more, but their 75 to 80% of their costs are driven simply by staff. So that's salary and benefits. And when you have to make large cuts, unfortunately, that 20% that's left, a lot of that is fixed costs, whether it be utilities or needed technology, things like that. You can't make cuts there. And if you do, I mean, you ruin the education process for our kids. So unfortunately, at that point, you have to start to look at the employees.
And you have kids in the school district too. You send your kids to
Yeah, my daughter goes to Chatfield. So the Board of Education looked at cuts that can be made that had the least impact on the learning environment for the students.
And it looked like, according to meeting minutes that I looked over from last month, they had to cut $630,000. Well, then that was taken down to $300,000 essentially, or
$630,000 was the number that I asked the Board of Education to contribute to roughly that $1 million hole that we had.
And this is going to be most likely Jen Magri calling, so I'm just going to apologize for interrupting Kurt. But hi, Jen. It's Eugene at the Valley Indy. It would help if I actually answered the phone. Hi, Jen. It's Eugene from the Valley Indy. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. We are live on the Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us.
Wait, well.
So right now at this point, Kurt was just explaining the dollar amount that needed to be cut from the Seymour school budget because of the state budget woes. And I had said $630, but you were clarifying that.
Yeah, the $630 was the initial amount that I had asked the Board of Education to come up with. And they came up with that number, but then again, you had to add in, as we talked about, the overruns and special education cost. So when you factored that back in, they had to find other places to make cuts at that point, because that number still had to be paid. Now, if the Board of Education can't absorb it in its budget, then that just falls to the bottom line and needs to be absorbed overall by the budget. So, it's a right pocket, left pocket thing, but we have to stop looking at these budgets as right pocket and left pocket. It's the taxpayers.
Not to bang on the table, because it'll really be thunder. Sorry.
It's the taxpayers of Seymour's money.
So I'm confused though, and this is I'll fully admit this is where I am. There's lots of areas I'm an idiot in. I'm a complete ignoramus when it comes to school budgeting. Mm-hmm. So how much money did they have to? If you could break it down to the simplest, how much money did they have to cut when they met last month?
The total cuts were in the neighborhood of $1 million.
Okay.
In total.
Because I was reading the meeting minutes. I swore it said $630, and then they actually made $300,000 in cuts. Was I completely misinterpreting that?
No. Well, it's $600,000, and then you have to subtract or add back in, I should say, the overruns and special ed costs.
Okay. Oh, that didn't include that.
Right.
I was under the impression that was all included.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, Jen, just turning to you. As a member of the school board for a long time and an active person in the Valley in general, I assume this was not an easy decision. From what I understand, one of the things that ended up happening was you decided to lay off 13 clerical paraprofessionals. How did you arrive at that decision, Jen?
That kept running by me.
And that's Kurt.
Sorry, I don't know how to make my phone stop.
We have Kurt's phone. Jen, can you still hear me? Okay, you're cutting off a little, but I had just asked how you arrived at that decision, and I assume it wasn't an easy decision, particularly right before Christmas.
No, absolutely. This is never something that I want to do. I feel for the people that were affected. Unfortunately, over the course of my career, I've been on both sides of the discussion throughout my lifetime. It's never an easy decision. What happened is that, the central office staff and our administration, knew that we needed to take a cut. This is very much a discussion that Kurt and the town was part of because we work very, very well together. So we went into this saying, what could we do that was least impactful to the instruction of our students? At the end of the day, had to take a cut. The proposal was cut clerical paraprofessionals, which was a classification of paraprofessionals. It was something that none of us wanted to do. We had quite a bit of discussion about it. Where this was presented to us, and tried to find other alternatives, and unfortunately were unable to do so.
Yeah, and Jen, unfortunately, you'll probably like hearing this because who wants to talk about this live on a podcast? But your phone is breaking up, or it could be my end. We were hearing every other word, but what you said did come through, that it wasn't an easy decision to make, and basically that you had to do what you had to do to give the least impact or to have the least impact on the kids within the schools. So instead of dragging this on, if the phone isn't working, I'm going to thank you for your time. I apologize for cutting you so short, but I also have an email from the superintendent that I can go over to sort of ask and answer these other questions that I have. So thank you so much, and I apologize.
Would you like me to try and call from a different phone? I can try and do that.
Well, now you're coming in. Now you're coming in really well.
Okay, so I'll hang on and we'll see how it goes.
All right, yeah. Let me just ask you again because you might have answered this already. But when I heard paraprofessionals at first, which I thought were teachers' aides that are tied to kids who might need special education, what is a clerical paraprofessional?
Okay, so in Seymour, just to make it clear, we had 3 classifications of paraprofessionals. One was monitors, which basically just do lunch and recess duty. There were clerical paraprofessionals, which basically were people who helped with secretarial type tasks and may do some lunch or recess duty as well. And then we have instructional paraprofessionals, which are the people who work typically one-on-one with a lot of our special education students. And those are required by PPPs and IEPs to be an aid to a particular student. So there's 3 different classifications. We looked at those classifications and we eliminated the clerical paraprofessional classification. So it affected all paraprofessionals that were clerical in nature.
And then in terms of, is there any chance that these positions can be brought back? I thought I saw something in meeting minutes saying that 13 workers that's a lot for the school district. I thought it said 3%, but that doesn't sound right now that I say it out loud. But is there any hope that as you've started this new budget cycle, these positions can be restored in any way?
It is not something that was restored in the budget that was approved last evening. Unfortunately, as we continue to have to, become leaner, this is an area which we felt was something that, though these women absolutely were part of our community, we hated to see them go. It was an area, like I said, was the least impactful to instruction, which is why we ended up making the cut that we did. And then there is no plan at this time to restore that classification.
Then Jen, what about other were any program cuts made? What else did you have to do last month to satisfy these cuts that had to be made?
We also eliminated the winter spring college intern program, and what that is we have college interns who are students that are typically pursuing their master's degree and need teaching experience. So they work in our buildings, typically as substitutes and with teachers as part of their overall teacher training. So that is something that we walked away from for this next semester as well.
And then you had mentioned last night the superintendent presented, I guess, his recommended budget, and the school board endorsed it?
The school board voted on the proposed budget, and we accepted the budget but made a few amendments. So I can actually give you the figures if you would like those.
Yeah, before you do that, let me just ask, because again, I'm an ignoramus. It's always important to keep in mind. When you say, does the school board start reviewing it, or you've adopted it and now it gets passed to the town's Board of Finance?
We have adopted the budget and it will be passed to the Board of Finance.
Okay, gotcha. All right, yeah. How does it compare to last year's budget in terms of spending and percent increase? If you could give those generalities.
Sure, absolutely. I can actually give you specific figures, so if you have a pen and piece of paper. Last year, the overall school budget was $32,974,308. Okay. The budget for the 17-18 school year will be $33,378,752. Okay. Which is a 444 increase, which equates to 1.23%. Okay, and that is what is being requested.
And so I assume that's a pretty. Are there any new programs in there? Is anybody getting raises in this budget?
Sure. So let me speak to proposed additions. There is the addition of a special education program at Bungie School. That includes adding a special education teacher and an instructional paraprofessional. That program would allow us to provide a behavioral classroom for some of our students who have special needs. It is the hope that that is a mitigating factor moving forward as students with needs perhaps come into our district or are identified as needing extra support in that area, that we would not have to outplace more students. The hope is also that we may be able to bring a few of the students that are currently outplaced back into district with the addition of this classroom.
Okay. And what happens if the Board of Finance, let's say, trims some of that roughly 1% increase? Is that going to? Is there any wiggle room with this budget?
I would say that there's very little wiggle room. We're about as lean as we can get without affecting programs and staff. So obviously, if the Board of Finance came back and said, this is not going to fly, we would have to have more discussion at the Board of Education level, along with our central office staff to figure out what we can do. I'm relatively confident, and Kirk can speak to this as well, that the Board of Finance will be accepting of this budget. Whether the taxpayers will is, another phase that we have to go through. But we have worked side by side with the town because of our great relationship with downtown in developing this and making sure that our proposed increases are in line with what Kurt and the town are looking for to make sure that we can stabilize our mill rate and all that wonderful stuff. So I think Kurt can probably, add what I just mentioned.
And then I just want to ask you one more question, Jen, and then I'll let you go because you have to work for a living. Unlike
I do.
Yeah, so I really do appreciate you taking your lunch break essentially to talk to us. But there was that issue that I had messaged you about, and I messaged the superintendent as well, and I think I might have mentioned it to First Selectman Miller as well. There was, and I know nothing about it because we haven't covered this at all, but I guess last year, when the former superintendent was leaving, there were some questions about spending that was done about June 30th of last year. And the former superintendent wrote a letter saying, hey, and I'm paraphrasing this all, hey, these purchase orders were made for a lot of money, but they were made on my last day, and I was the only one there, and I didn't approve some of these purchases. Did the school board ever get to the bottom of what happened there? And had some of those purchases not happened, would we have not had to lay off people last month?
Sure. The Finance Subcommittee of the Board of Ed had met and discussed what essentially is our year-end encumbrance process. And certainly going forward, as part of that discussion, we're going to be receiving more information about planned and potential year-end purchases. With respect to whether or not what happened in the last fiscal year could have helped us with this fiscal year, that's not how this works. What happens is we get an allocation from the town for our fiscal year. That is the money we can spend within that fiscal year. We can't roll over money. As you know, we have no contingency fund. So that bottom line amount that we have made available to us is what we have to work with. So typically what happens is anything that is a purchase, say, for equipment or maintenance or something that we can defer towards the end of the school year, that is what we do. Because you never know, to Kurt's earlier point, are we going to have another special education student then that we're going to have to take on the fees for? So we leave purchases to the very end of the year, but when we know how much money we have left. I think some of the transition, with Christine leaving and Mike coming on, we weren't completely through that process. It would not have helped us this year because, again, that was for last fiscal year.
And was there anything improper, or was anybody held accountable for some of those last-minute purchases? In terms, I know there was hurdles purchased for something like $14,000, just for people who are listening who don't know. And I think there was a shed purchased, and the former superintendent was saying, "Oh, I didn't sign off on those." Who did?
Let me just get it straight. There was no shed purchase, so that did not happen. There were some things that were purchased that we have an open list of things that we need in the district. Sometimes we can buy them in a given school year. Sometimes they get deferred the next school year. So if we have some money at the end of a school year, we look at, what are the things the district has on its list of things that they would like to purchase, and we'll sometimes purchase those things in a year sooner or in a year later from when we initially projected them. So we did purchase, some hurdles, some tables. Those are all things that we needed to purchase, whether we purchased them last year or this year. They needed to be purchased.
Okay, so nobody got in trouble, essentially, or was reprimanded?
No.
Okay.
No, I think, we met, we made sure that, moving forward, we're going to have a lot better communication about this, so there isn't confusion and some of us saying, why is this happening versus something else not happening. So we are confident at the board level that we have addressed, the process. Now that, we have a new superintendent, this is how it's going to work. Here's how we're going to find out about these things, so that, we have a voice in the process at the end of the year that says, okay, these are the things we think is important. Are we on the same page?
Okay, Jen, thank you so much again for taking the time to come on and talk to us today. I really do appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, so that was Jennifer Magri.
She knows her stuff.
I know this is the longest Kurt Miller has ever sat in one place without having to say
I enjoyed that a little bit.
The only thing I'll add there was that the superintendent had sent me an email. I had asked him how much cost savings did the school district realize after laying off 13 employees. And were these full-time employees, do you know? Were they...
Yeah, full-time employees.
Wow, okay.
I mean, they work the school year.
Right.
So, I mean, they get the summers off like the kids do.
Normal.
But they work the full school year. So, full-time employees.
So since this took place as of December 31st, that was their last day, the total cost savings was approximately $212,000. And obviously, you have to pay unemployment.
That's factored into that number.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so that's the net number.
And then just in terms of, obviously this is more than a number. These are people, probably a lot of people who
a lot of Seymour residents
live in town.
Yep.
Is this the most, I don't remember since we've launched, since we've been around, we launched in 2009, of something like this happening. Is this sort of the most...
This is the most...
This is severe, I guess.
It's the most layoffs that I remember us having in some time. I can't say if it's the most we've ever had, but it's the most in my memory.
Since you've come in you've been
6 years. It's the first time we've really done any major layoffs at all in the 6 years. But I'm just thinking back as long as I've been involved, probably 15 or 16 years now.
So now I know, the other thing that I saw in those meeting minutes was that you scheduled a sort of Seymour Summit. It was billed as, I guess, for right before Christmas.
Yep.
So how do you prevent this from happening again? Or at least what can the town do? Because obviously, Jen had mentioned that you're in on these meetings. You were at the meeting last night, or no?
I was unable. I was at a different meeting last night.
But the town is. It's not like in some towns you go. It's like the school district's over here and the town is over here.
No, not
and then
at all.
At budget time they meet at May.
Right.
So what are you doing? What was the Seymour Summit, and what are you doing to prepare for what could happen again?
The Seymour Summit, I brought together a lot of the senior department heads, chairman of the Board of Finance, superintendent. We met for 2 days off-site, and we essentially went through the budget top to bottom, working on not only fiscal year 18, but preparing for fiscal year 19. We brought in our auditors. We brought in a lot of our larger financial vendors. And we just spent the 2 days going through the budget, looking for ways, number one, to make the 2018 budget, the one that we're currently in, a little bit more palatable and getting us through it. And then,
watch the table.
I know, I keep
I'm
tapping.
sorry. This microphone is so sensitive.
You would think I was Italian the way I wave my hands around. And then working on the fiscal year 19.
Take the call. Sorry, Cyprus, you're spam anyway.
Yeah. And working on the fiscal year 19 budget, to make sure that budget does not have any tax spikes, any tax abnormalities in it.
Yeah, are you going to be able to? I mean, that's a 1%. What's your reaction to the school budget that was approved last night and now is going to your Board of Finance?
Actually, I'm very happy with the 1.23 budget increase that they came up with. It fits right into the plan that I had overall of where I'd like to see the school board come in. Overall, it's looking that the town is going to be about 0.5% below where it was now next year. So we're going to be able to.
This is why I'm a writer.
It's going to
be what?
It's going to cost less to run the.
Your budget's going to shrink.
Yes.
Okay.
There, you see, you're a writer. You summarized that much better than I was. So, the end of the day, the mill rate is projected to not move again for the third year in a row. So I know one of the questions on there, a resident asked about that because that's why I keep looking down. I'm trying to refresh.
Jumping ahead.
But that was one of the things that we worked on, and we had talked about in this 5-year plan and keeping the mill rate stable, and that was our goal. If you look at the model that everybody likes to use, which is Shelton, it took Mayor Loretti and his team 26 years to get to where they are, but their mill rate hasn't moved in 9 years. So that's what we're trying to accomplish as well. In Seymour, this will be year 3 of the mill rate not moving, but that takes into account large cuts in state funding. And, the core of this problem and the reason these people had to be laid off can be laid directly at the feet of Governor Malloy. And I don't mean to pick on him, but this is the problem when you're not fiscally responsible and you don't do the things that you should. This is the outcome of that. The state has no other place to go but to the municipal funding. And with the changes that were made yesterday, where they put money back in for Medicare, which was a good thing and something that they should have been doing, that increases that $220 million deficit to $270 million. And the governor has already said that he'd like to cut an additional $100 million in this budget from municipalities. So that could be another $500,000 or $600,000 that Seymour gets.
And how would Seymour absorb? You've already laid off. The school district's laid off 13 people, cut programs. What else can?
At this point, it would be cuts to more positions.
And
it's salary and services is where we're at this point.
I wanted to ask you. There is a mill rate stabilization fund in the town of Seymour. You just last month released a press release pointing out that the town's bond rating was kept as is, which is an accomplishment given the chaos of the last year and the fiscal uncertainty in the state. Yep. Was there any way, or why didn't the town allocate more money to the school district? Why didn't the school district or the school board go to the finance committee and say, or board of finance and say, like, hey, we're in a rough spot, we're going to have to lay off people unless you guys can cut loose some more funding for us?
The issue with that is these are compounding problems. The money that's cut from the state, let's not kid ourselves, is never coming back. So if we were to send a one-time revenue source to fill this hole, we're still going to have to address this problem.
You've dug a hole
in next year's budget.
Out of.
Right. And that's where towns get in trouble, where they use one-time revenue sources, so they pay for reoccurring expenses with their fund balance. I mean, that's a dangerous proposition, because as those salaries continue to grow, because they're going to compound with raises and things like that, that revenue source gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So it wouldn't be fiscally prudent for us to do that. We would just be kicking the can down the road, and I won't do that.
And then just quickly, and I'm sorry to jump around.
No, it's
but
okay.
Were these union workers, and where was the union and all this? And was there any thought of giving furlough days or union gives back, or opening up contracts to lessen the blow of laying off 13 people?
I know that was discussed, particularly at the board level, because I was at that meeting and it was raised by several of the members. But you have multiple unions involved in the Board of Education, and this group of 13 employees is a union pretty much unto itself. So they would have had to get concessions from other unions, whether it be the teachers' unions, the administrators' unions, and so on and so forth, which in theory sounds easy, but isn't necessarily always as easy. And again, when you talk about teachers, if a teacher takes a furlough day, if the teacher doesn't come in and work that day, well, you have to have a substitute teacher fill that spot. So there's not necessarily a savings there. So, the teachers themselves would have had to say, yes, we're going to work, but just not get paid for that day. And, if those conversations were had with the teachers, I can't speak to. I don't know if they were or were not. But, things like that, could that have saved a few of those para jobs? Potentially it could have. I don't know.
Thank you for ending as I'm taking a sip there. We're like,
Well,
Mike and the Mad Dog here. So we're 30 minutes into this. We're going to take questions if there are any. Ethan will tell us. But I just wanted to say,
Ethan behind the glass?
again, yes, the Robin Quivers of this podcast. This podcast is sponsored by valleygivesback.org. Go to that website. They're trying to spread the word about a new way to support nonprofits, charities, and Valley causes. It's valleygivesback.org.
And you know what? I can jump in and help your commercial out. I could speak firsthand because last year my brother and I opened a fund for my parents. And I want to tell you, it was very easy to do. You just reach out. I had the conversation with Sharon. She walked me right through it, filled out the paperwork, had it taken care of. So anybody that's considering doing something like that, the Valley Community Foundation is absolutely the place to do it.
And this new initiative is about planned giving. And if you look back, we had Sharon Closius on last year to talk about that. And I'm sure we'll have her on again. But a word from our sponsor. Here, you can take a. Well, we didn't get you any water. But adding a Valley charity to your estate plan creates a lasting legacy that tells future generations what causes matter to you.
That's right.
Your action will inspire others to follow your lead and make a difference. With a planned gift, you have the power to impact the Valley community forever without affecting your current lifestyle. Learn more at valleygivesback.org. Plan now, give later, impact tomorrow. valleygivesback.org. All right, Ethan, do we have questions from the public? Has Kurt Miller planted people? I'm sorry.
I don't do that.
Kidding. I know.
We have one question.
It's not all the time.
One question.
From Rosemary.
It's not an election year.
Rosemary Kamonyi. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. She says, can we please have a reduced town tax rate for seniors? You are taxing us out of town. And I've also asked if anybody else has any other questions, and I'll let you know.
Do you have a response? How are you helping or not helping seniors? And, in fact, are you trying to drive your parents elsewhere?
Well, what I like to do, I'm going to talk about my parents.
That was just being...
They're in Florida, so they don't care.
Oh, they're gone.
Yeah.
They're down there with Jody Rowe.
Yeah. So the...
which makes Ethan really mad, by the way.
Well, no, they're just the snowbirds. They go down for a couple months and then come back. But to her question, we have the tax stabilization in there for seniors, and what it is, it's a pool of money that the seniors can apply to, and it helps reduce their taxes, and the amount they get is based on the number of people who qualify and apply and things like that.
If I'm a senior, or if I pose that question, maybe she doesn't know about that. How do I avail myself of that?
You call the tax assessor's office, and then they'll walk you through what you need to qualify for that. But it's a pool. It's a limited pool of money, and then it's $50,000, and the seniors get rebates off that. It's usually $100 or $125. So it's not a huge amount, but it certainly helps out. But again, I want to stress the mill rate is projected to stay level for a third year in a row, and the value to that is as our operation is run more efficiently, businesses are more interested in coming to Seymour because they can plan a little bit better. And we've talked about this before. When businesses like Thule, Basement Systems are making the type of investments that they're making in Seymour, that's going to help stimulate growth. And with stimulated growth, allows you to keep the mill rate stable. So we are definitely working on that as a priority. It was a big topic of that summit that we talked about. That
economic development.
Yeah. Well, not just economic development, because that's important, but it's running your operation and making sure it's efficient. And decisions that you're making today don't have ripple effects down the road that make them unaffordable. And what we've seen in the past is, and the state is notorious for this, it makes a decision on what it needs for the budget that it's currently dealing with and doesn't think about budgets down the road. I mean, we have a projected $3 billion deficit for the next biennium budget, which they're not even worried about addressing. We're trying to address not only the current budget, but budgets down the road to make sure that there's not these large spikes in the mill rate. That's why we've been able to keep it stable now for 3 years.
And speaking about your running for a state treasurer, have you...
I have an exploratory committee for statewide office, and I have not committed to any office as of yet. Because if I were to agree to what you just said, that potentially could be considered that I've announced for a particular office, and that could get me in trouble.
Have you have explained to me, because I'm an ignoramus, especially when it comes to these state issues.
Yep.
You're raising money.
I am raising money, yes.
How is it going? Yesterday we had Mayor Boughton, one of your
Good friend of mine, yes.
good friend of yours, over in Danbury.
Yep.
He threw his hat into the ring.
He did.
Yet again. He was also a guest on my horror movie podcast. I'll just throw that out there. I don't know if he knew that or not. But how is the fundraising going for you? What's your magic dollar? When do you have your big... Where did J.R. Romano come down and pat you on the back? And when does all that happen?
My goal in December, because I've had the exploratory committee open for about a month, was to raise about $5,000 just to get some seed money in place to take care of some small infrastructure things, website, things like that. So we were able to hit that goal. I had said that by the second or third week in January that I would make a decision as to which office I would be running for. My primary focus...
Or not run, I guess.
Or not run,
yeah.
okay. Over the last 4 or 5 weeks has been just reaching out to RTC chairs, party elders, people that are involved, and kind of gauging the level of support that I would have, gathering opinions. I will be moving forward with a statewide run, and I'll be announcing probably the end of next week specifically what office that will be. Once I make,
so you are going to run.
I will be moving. Yeah, I will be going for it. I will definitely be running for office statewide office in 2018, and I'll announce that probably the end of next week. Once I make that announcement, then the fundraising will begin. It'll be a serious effort in fundraising.
And so you were just elected, right? Just this November, you were elected to your 4th 2-year term.
Correct.
So you're going to be, at the end of this year, you'll have completed one of your 2-year term as
Correct.
Seymour First Selectman. Okay.
Yes.
So you're giving Seymour the high hat, possibly.
Well, I would say that a little bit differently. One of the biggest issues that Seymour is having right now is issues with funding from the state of Connecticut because of its lack of financial management.
As evidenced by laying off 13 clerical paraprofessionals.
And the two positions that I'm looking at, and we've discussed this, or two of the positions I'm exploring, is treasurer and comptroller. And I think those two positions would have a direct impact on the finances of the state of Connecticut, which would benefit the town of Seymour. So I wouldn't say that I was leaving Seymour. I would say that I'm trying to put myself in a position that could help benefit Seymour for the long term.
And then and I know I've asked you this before, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself. And also if I apologize if I'm just concentrating on Seymour, not the larger picture
that's
here.
Okay.
But if so you make your announcement, will you finish out your term as first selectman, or do you step away from it to concentrate on this run? What will happen there?
I will continue as first selectman, and then nights and weekends is when I would be doing the campaigning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions from the general public?
No.
No one wants snow removal? No one wants to complain about snow removal or nothing? Trash pickup?
None at this time.
Wow.
So listen, I'd like to throw
Go
a plug
ahead.
for our public works guys. I mean,
that's just what people talk about.
And
I've been talking
our
about.
Snow removal, I think the guys did a fantastic job. They started early pre-treating the roads, and were out basically for about 20 hours working hard, and got through everything they needed to get through. Actually, one of the residents sent me a message to say they can't believe that they can actually see the pavement. That the pre-treatment that had been done in advance, plus the plowing, once the road started to warm up with cars driving on and things, heated that road up and brought it right down to the asphalt. So kudos to them for the hard work and effort that they put in.
We actually just got a question from Julie Lynn. She says, newspaper reports say Hartford plans to reduce rail service on Waterbury Line. Does that mean there's a better chance the 67/42 road will be built?
That's actually a really good question.
Can you repeat that for me?
Newspaper reports say Hartford plans to reduce rail service on Waterbury Line. Does that mean there's a better chance the 67/42 road will be built?
And just to give a little perspective on her question, and it's a great question, the 6742 connector is the one that runs essentially from downtown Seymour by Subway and Stop and Shop, would run all the way into Beacon Falls along Route 8. That would open up that land directly behind Stop and Shop that's owned by the Haynes family. There's about 240 acres or so back there. that they have a plan to develop. It's a nice mixed-use product that once the project in Oxford is completed, that's the next thing they're going to turn their attention to. To build that road is about $10 million.
And you've been trying to get money to fund
We
that road
have.
for
We've been partnering.
a long time.
Yeah, with Beacon Falls. We've applied for 3 Tiger grants. Tiger grants are federal transportation grants, large ones. Unfortunately, we have been unsuccessful. We're going to apply again. Rick Dunn from now NVCOG, Naugatuck Valley COG, and his team lead that process for us. Myself and First Selectman Bielik of Beacon Falls work hand in hand with our state and federal delegation. But unfortunately, that money a lot of time ends up going to the bigger cities. Waterbury got one. I believe New London has gotten one in recent years. So, but to answer Julie's question, no, I don't think it'll have any impact on that. It's very unfortunate that rail service on the Waterbury branch line is not up to snuff.
Yeah, because I'm just looking at an article here from the Post. I saw that they're talking about increasing fares because we just had Jim Gilday on a few weeks ago with Rick Dunn, and we've been talking for years now about the services that's supposed to be coming to improve the Waterbury branch and how important it is to economic development. And now we're just now we're going to build a road into the woods.
Well, no. The road, the connector between 67 and 42, is simply a benefit for Seymour and Beacon Falls. Mm-hmm. So that would be a huge push to economic development in both towns. That really doesn't necessarily benefit the corridor as a whole, because the corridor as a whole is looking at getting someone from Bridgeport right up to Waterbury on a lot more frequent basis than they're able to do now. And because of the way the rail is set up, you can't have trains going up and down at the same time like you can on a lot of other lines. Mm-hmm. So we need to make investments in that infrastructure to change that. With the increase to the fares, that's coming to the problems that DOT is having because of the budget crunch.
The transportation lockbox we were supposed to...
Which, is about as safe as throwing a $100 bill or a $100 bill out your window. There's so much pressure on...
What are you trying to say there?
If you threw a $100 bill out the window and let it blow in the wind, somebody's going to take it. So
this is Ansonia. It would be walk back up here within minutes, and they would say, "Sir, you dropped this." I just don't want to upset Mayor Cassetti.
No, you don't want to upset Mayor Cassetti. He's got a nice right hook. But the issue with the fares is because of the problems DOT is having and their inability to fund. So they need to increase revenue streams that are coming in. That's why there's an increase to fares. That has no impact on improving the line between Bridgeport and Waterbury.
Okay. Well, I can't imagine asking people to pay more to ride a train that never comes.
Well, that's
government.
We have another question from Jeremy Kitless. Is there any chance that Seymour could have a boat launch for Housatonic River access?
Oh.
It's actually something that we have been working on. Our primary focus is having something for emergency use first. We have some loose agreements with some owners down on the river that allows us to put our boats in if we need to for some type of emergency on the river. We're trying to secure our own boat launch, and then once that's done, we would look for something more for recreational use that was managed by the town. Yeah, because unfortunately I have to go around to the other side over to Derby.
It's wonderful.
Or Shelton to get in.
And what's this? There's some creepy thing developing with kayaks on the Naugatuck. Have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, there's kind of a crazy woman that just recently moved into Seymour that is working with our
former Valley Indy reporter Jody Gill,
the professor. She's been working with Mary McNellis, our director of community service, coming up with a proposal for that. It's moving along, so maybe it's something that we might see in the spring or summer.
As long as Waterbury stops having sewage spills and killing all the fish.
That's a problem. That was a little nasty.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we don't have any other questions, or if we have some, feel free to interrupt. But I wanted to talk briefly about Linda Gentile retiring.
Yep.
We were sort of like, our reaction was, Ethan said, well, there's this Democratic wave that's supposed to happen. This is maybe good news for state Democrats. And I kind of said, well, the Valley is not like exactly the rest of that conventional wisdom might not apply here in the Valley, especially if you look at George Logan being elected. for Ansonia Derby, Rich Zekin.
Mm-hmm.
What did Tom do that was so wrong that they just took it away from your party for 34
I believe
years?
he was only there for one term, if I'm not mistaken. Then he went to work. He went to work for Deep, I believe.
Okay.
So I don't know if that correlated or he went to Deep after he lost. I'm not sure, but.
So, what do you think the chances are? Are your chances better than ever for Republicans? And who give us some? We're 50 minutes into this. Just let us know. What are you hearing? Who's going to run? Cara Rochelle told us she's the Naugatuck Valley Young Democrats, aligned with your nemesis Stephen Bohuniak. Stefan. Oh, I just messed that up. I'm sorry, but she said it was
Stefan,
something.
no, I was the one who said your name right, not him.
Yeah.
Because I screw his name up all the time too. But
Cara Rochelle had said that she would consider it. I believe were her words. We asked Joe Jauman. We're here. Jauman. All right. That's I should not. This is why I write. But look, we're trying different things. Jauman, Mahopac, New York native, or Mahopac, had said he hasn't made a decision, but we're hearing Republicans are going to push him as the candidate. What are you hearing?
Oh, well, it's a different district than I'm in.
Right.
I think the potential for the Republicans to take that seat is substantially better with Linda not running. I think Linda was a popular state rep. I think Linda did a nice job, and not only for Ansonia and Derby, but Linda had the whole valley in mind when she was in Hartford, which was a good thing. Linda and I worked together on a lot of different things, and she would be quick to reach out and, if it was a valley-related issue, she would be quick to reach out and kind of give an update just to make sure that, I was aware of what was going on.
We were struck by the fact that, nobody... we kind of went for the juicy, hey, and people were all, well, look, first, it was almost like we did it too early. People were saying... pay respect to this legislator, and she's very popular.
Well, here's the thing. We're Republicans and Democrats, and, we fight to win elections, and we have philosophical differences. But at the end of the day, we all want what's best for our communities or what's best for our state. And, how you conduct yourself when you're doing your business, I think, goes a long way in what other, politicians think of you. And Linda always handled her business the right way. She was always respectful. She was always courteous. I mean, she was tough, don't get me wrong. Linda was by no means a pushover. But the way she handled herself, I think, is why you got the reactions that you did. Now, am I happy that Linda is not running because it provides an opportunity for a Republican to take that seat? Absolutely 100%. Am I sad that Linda, the person, is not going to be involved? I am, because she's a good lady and she's earned that respect. But
so, what Republicans have you heard might throw their hat into the ring?
I've heard Joe's name mentioned. There's some names that I'd like to throw in just to stir up some.
This is the place for it.
Some controversy because different towns.
Phil Tripp, I guess, told Ethan. We had asked Phil Tripp, Ansonia alderman, ran against Joe Crisco a few years back. He said he's not considering running at this time.
Well, Phil's a name. I think Laura Vaccaro is another name. Maybe that could do that. I believe he's the new president of the Board of Aldermen in Ansonia. Smart guy, astute politician.
John Marini, I think you asked too, Ethan?
Yeah, he said no.
I think John Marini would be another great name. Definitely smart guy. Yeah, listen, it's Ansonia and Derby, and the Ansonia and Derby charters allow their chief elected officials to potentially run for and carry both offices.
Oh, I did not even know this. Okay.
So, you could maybe a Mayor Cassetti or a Mayor Zekin could throw their hat into, popular people in these two towns. So it could be a lot of different people.
And we asked Democrats too. Ethan, you had reached out to Tarek Raslin to see if he might consider running. He just ran against Mayor Cassetti in Ansonia. He was new to town, new to political life. But what did he say to you, if anything? And you might have to talk about it. How are we doing sound-wise? Everything is
good. Yeah. In an email, he said, I'm focusing on City Hall and helping statewide candidates, so I will not be seeking the nomination. But I will be working hard to support and campaign with the endorsed candidate. So Raslin says he's not pursuing that office.
Yeah. So what Democrats are going to do?
See, but I just want to say that's a smart answer from somebody that's not very seasoned, Because if he immediately jumped into this race, he now goes from somebody that wants to help the community to somebody that's turning into an opportunist that's just looking to climb a ladder. That's actually a very smart, very politically astute answer that he gave. So I give him credit for that.
Who have you heard on the Democratic side? You can go gossip about them, right? I mean,
to be honest with you, I haven't really heard any names. I mean, I was surprised when I got the email from you that Linda wasn't running, so I haven't had an opportunity. But I'm trying to talk Stefan into moving to Ansonia, if that's possible. No, I'm only kidding. There's the Valley.
I like that we're trying to set up this rivalry between you two. That's fun.
Yeah, we have a good time with it. He's he's a good guy. He's learning a lot, and listen, he's going to be a viable candidate in the future for whatever he wants to run for.
And I reached out to Michael Mandel, who's a spokesman for the state Democrats, and we meant to do this for the story, but he got back to me after we had already published. But he thanked Gentile, said she's been a great leader, a great representative for Ansonia Derby, and he said this year will be a strong year for Democrats because our grassroots momentum has been growing since the municipal elections. With the right candidates, we can elect strong Democrats who will put the interests of their constituents and our state ahead of the interests of their party. One thing CT Republicans can't do or haven't been able to do. I don't believe the premise that the GOP is stronger in these communities. I just believe that local races are always defined by local factors. Because I had said that there's this GOP resurgence happening in Ansonia and Derby and was already strong in Seymour.
Well, he said, he, for a professional spokesperson, he said something in the beginning of his statement and something the complete opposite at the end of his statement. He said that there's this big Democratic wave that's coming, but you can't.
Well, that was Ethan.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say that he said two completely different things.
You were just repeating.
Listen, local
conventional wisdom.
Local races, mayors and first selectmen, a lot of times are based on local issues. There's not a huge correlation between what's going on nationally and a lot of times even statewide with these local races. You can get picked off because I believe it was a woman in, I think it's New Fairfield. There was an issue with parking for, they have a state pond or a state lake. And
Squants.
That was a big to-do, and that ended up being her downfall. The mayor of Bristol had some issues, personal. And, I think that's what led to his downfall. So I don't necessarily agree that there's any type of Republican or Democratic wave.
And then Michael Mandel continued, I certainly do not think that was reflective of an electorate that believed, and this is commenting on the fact that Ansonia Cassetti won by a landslide and Zekin unseated Democrat in Derby. And Mandel said he didn't think it was reflective of an electorate that believed the Republican way of doing business, which he characterized as ripping health care away from the middle class, supporting a GOP tax cut that hurt communities like Ansonia and Derby across CT in order to support the GP donor class.
I'm trying not to laugh at this comment.
But he segues into the national picture here.
That's the thing, because he does it as a representative of the Connecticut Democratic Party. He's going to do everything he possibly can to take your attention away from the train wreck that is Hartford. And that rests squarely on the back of... I thought you were going to say the
president's Twitter feed.
No. That rests squarely on the back of Governor Malloy and the Democratic-controlled legislature for the last 30 years. They can try to shy you away from that by saying all these things about Donald Trump this and Donald Trump that. That's not what the problem is. The problem is the policies put forth by this Democratic-controlled legislature and blessed by Governor Malloy are our problem. And if you look at the change to the Connecticut legislature over the last 12 years, it is completely opposite to what he's saying. What he's saying is complete fantasy. Now, the residents of the state of Connecticut, now you got me rolling. Yeah, the residents of the state of Connecticut have slowly over the last 12 years said to this legislature, enough is enough, and what was a huge supermajority and a tiny minority is now basically even to the point where the Senate is deadlocked. And I fully expect that both houses are going to flip Republican in 2018. So
even if, now I know probably Ethan wants to get in on this, and feel free to. We had, yesterday President Trump talked about immigration, and he let the cameras in for about an hour and basically let reporters and the public see how the sausage is made. And there was some talk, he wanted to show people essentially that he's not crazy.
Right.
Do you think? And I don't know if that was what he was doing.
Right.
That's just what I've read. We had talked about President Trump when he was a candidate,
Yep.
or then just the reality show guy. And I had said, personally, I didn't think he was fit for office just because I listened to Howard Stern and I wouldn't vote for a whack packer, and but he is the president now, and he just this week Bannon split with them. It's always like one drama after the other. It seems his Twitter feed can be problematic.
Yeah.
But is there a point where local Republicans or state Republicans have to be accountable for what he's doing? Does it hurt you as a Republican, and do you think it hurts your party's cause in the state? I mean, is it a legitimate distraction from Governor Malloy's mishandling of the state? And will more Democrats come out in the midterms to say, aren't they more motivated? Aren't Democrats more motivated now because they've got what they feel is a madman on Twitter challenging
the madman on Twitter
about the size of buttons?
Who's been there for 12 months. Less than 12 months. Do you think he's the cause of the financial crisis that the state of Connecticut is in?
I'm just a reporter. I don't know either.
Absolutely not. But that's what the Connecticut Democratic Party will say over and over again. They will point to Donald Trump's doing this and Donald Trump's doing that. What impact does the last 12 months have to do with the fiscal crisis that the state of Connecticut is in? That was not created over the last 12 months. That was created over the last 40 years of bad decisions by their Democratic-controlled majority.
There were Republican governors for a lot of
Roland
and Rel.
What can a Republican governor
That's what
do?
Democrats would say.
If they have a veto-proof majority, which they did for a lot of those years. Now, listen, I'm not absolving Governor Rel and Governor Rowland because they made some mistakes on some of the contracts.
Rowland.
That aside.
Other than being put in jail.
Yeah, other than going to jail. Oh. But some of the contracts they negotiated, I think, were bad deals, and I would absolutely agree with that. But the Democratic legislature controlled the agenda. They controlled the votes. They controlled the policy for 40 years. And now, suddenly, they're going to say that over the last 12 months, that President Trump is the cause of all of this. That's just being disingenuous to the residents of the state of Connecticut. And this is the reason why, over the last 12 years, they've been slowly, their majority has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, because people are losing trust in their ability to make the appropriate decision.
And then just switching gears a little bit.
Oh, this is fun.
But
wow.
Talking about a national... Still, I wanted to keep it on Trump a little bit.
Okay.
People might be going nuts now.
I want to get the Trump doll down.
We have one last question.
People hate when...
It's a local question. It wouldn't be a Seymour podcast if there weren't a question about Tri-Town Plaza.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Julie Lynn asks, has Mr. Spector...
that will never be developed. Let's put it... every time you've been on here, they're going to tear it down. They're going to put up reeds.
Yesterday when you sent me the email about what, kind of what we're going to talk about, and there was no mention of Tri-Town, I'm like, so I should probably shoot him a text just to kind of get an update. And I didn't do that, so I have to apologize. I don't have an update. I haven't talked to him in a couple weeks.
It's almost glaring now, and maybe I don't mean to editorialize, but we've seen the Valley Bowl was bulldozed and reborn. Panera Bread, the Big Y. I mean, Walmart left, which was a huge blow to Derby, and now the Big Y is actually coming in. Haynes in Oxford that's incredible, and in Shelton, I mean, every 5 days there's something. And yet Tri-Town Plaza just sits there. I go to the movies there. I just saw The Last Jedi there. It's a great shopping center. I get my Dunkin' Donuts, Tire Shack. It's all beautiful. But it's just stagnant. And then we don't know.
Well,
at this point, the town's. It's not something anybody campaign on. It used to be a campaign issue with first selectman races. But
it did, and there's really at this point nothing that the town can do. We can make calls.
Other than get angry, or
well, you can get angry, but you get angry that the sun comes out. You can't. You have to keep your anger focused, I guess, and that's not something that's worth getting angry over, because unfortunately there's nothing that the town can do.
And you know what? I cut off the question. Did you actually read the question before I started blabbing?
She just said, has Mr. Spector, he's the owner, finally committed to apply for tear down permit of Plaza?
Oh, no. I mean, I can flat out answer that question. The answer is no.
And last we heard, there was some type of asbestos removal that did not go the way. There's some dispute happening between.
And my last update was the dispute was ongoing, but was getting near conclusion.
Has it made its way to a civil court?
I don't know. I didn't ask. But that once that process was done, then the demo permits would be applied for, and things would move forward. But I'm not going to give a time frame anymore, because it would just be a guess at this point.
I know. I'm thinking like when Bohuniak runs for first selectman, he just has to go through the podcast and lists all the different excuses for Tri-Town.
Well, listen, I'd rather talk about the almost $20 million invested in Seymour by Basement Systems and Thule, two of our largest taxpayers and employers. And when your largest taxpayers and your largest employers are making that type of reinvestment in the community, I think they would agree the community's heading in the right direction. Why does Bob Cinto keep building in Shelton? Because he believes in the Shelton story, and he's going to keep reinvesting his money there. We want Larry Janeski to believe the Seymour story and continue to reinvest in Seymour. We want Larry Janeski to be the Shelton version of Bob Cinto.
All right.
How's that for a plug?
All I could think was like, hey, if you want to buy an ad on the Valley Indy, it's $99.
Political ads too?
We've done political ads. Yeah, I think you just did one. I'll probably get a fine.
When did I do a
SEC.
political ad?
I'm just kidding. If there's anything you want to bring up, I was going to ask you about.
If you want to put my exploratory committee website on the bottom, I mean that might be a bridge too far, but it certainly wouldn't hurt.
The latest. I mean, there is, what's that book called? Wolf Coyote, Fire and Fury. Did you buy it?
Not yet, but I'm gonna read it.
Do you think? I mean, there's this whole debate as to whether it's true or not true, or what's your reaction to what's happened the last week in Washington, D.C. in terms of Fire and Fury, in terms of Steve Bannon defecting or being booted? I love how like the Mercer family, the mainstream media is so biased, and that you have a guy installed by rich people who gets booted the minute he goes against the family's line. Anyway, that's not journalism.
Well,
that's all I have to say.
I don't trust anything that comes out of the mainstream news these days, because they have their agendas, and it's gone are the days of reporting.
But compared to Breitbart?
Well, I said mainstream. I'm not talking about the crazy nut jobs. Listen, the days of the Walter Cronkites, and we all grew up in that era. When Walter Cronkite said something, I think you can all agree that you had confidence in what he was saying, that it was accurate, that it was researched, that it was good. Mm-hmm. He instilled that confidence in people. I don't see that same confidence now in the mainstream media.
You're going to buy Michael Wolff's book.
Well, because I want to read it. I'm just interested to see what it has to say. You would think that I watch Fox all the time, but I actually watch CNN every morning, because I'd like to hear essentially what the other side is saying. And, Governor Cuomo's son, and I can't even think of what his name is. Thank you. Off the top. The reporter. Chris, yeah. I mean, he has...
I'm a New Yorker.
He has an agenda. He does not like the president, and he will spin every story somehow the opposite direction. The president can say the sky is blue, and he's going to come out and argue that it's a shade of green. But it's kind of good to hear that. But how can you have faith in an organization like that that's dedicated just to the news, that is that biased and that slanted? And I say the same thing about Fox News. Fox News is ridiculous to the other side. So, where is that center ground? Where is that place that you can confidently say, yes, I'm getting the best possible news that I can, that's accurate, that is unbiased, that's vetted? I don't see any sources.
Yeah, what do you consume? Like what sites do you, for national news? What newspapers do you read? What do you hit up?
Honestly, I don't really read the newspaper. I do all of my stuff online, and my favorite stop is the Valley Indy, just to throw that plug
For
in
your
there.
Steve Bannon news?
For my Steve Bannon news. But, I'll go to Yahoo, I'll go to, MSN, those places.
Okay,
and
so
see
you're
the
going,
big,
you're
kind
going
of
for, those
the
are
major,
AP, Reuters,
right, the major
Wire
feeds.
stories. Okay.
But then I do try to watch, like I said, CNN. I do try to watch Fox to get a balance of the two. And then I like to think that I'm intelligent enough to make my own decision, that I'm not, and you know, I'm not a blindly follow President Trump guy.
You're not like a rabid partisan.
Never was. I mean, I'm a very liberal Republican. I mean, that's obvious. But I don't, just because the president says something, I don't necessarily think it's right. I don't think it's correct. I treated President Obama the same way. Just because he said something, that didn't automatically go to that's wrong. So you have to listen to what everybody's saying and form your own opinion. But I don't have the trust in the media that I did back when I was a kid.
I do I've started to watch. I mean, I swore off cable news for decades. I watched cable news when Wolf Blitzer and Bernard Shaw was hiding
CNN,
under the desk. When the bombs fell in 1991, when I was like a junior in high school. But then, like somewhere around OJ, I think it went off the rails. Like the OJ trial, it just sort of everything
news
went off the
isn't news
rails.
anymore.
It's all entertainment.
Yeah.
But I've brought myself, because I'm not I'm an independent. I don't really have. I don't consider myself partisan. I voted for both parties, but I'm not a fan of President Trump. He just offends me personally.
Right.
Just the way he doesn't have respect, and he never has. And I grew up in New York, and you always knew Trump was always just kind of a cartoon character. But to watch. So I started to watch Joe Scarborough because I like the fact that he just wakes up every day and just beats up the president. But man, you can only take that
that's what I'm saying.
so much. When I was watching on Thursday or Friday when the book came out, just to watch all these guys were doing. First of all, there would be no cable news if it wasn't for newspapers, because they just read the newspaper and then they just pontificate like I am right now, which I guess is totally hypocritical. But they just for an entire day were reading excerpts from the guy's book, just the entire day, and it just kind of lost any sense of, just decency, let alone fairness.
Right.
So it is, but I feel like that's where everyone is getting their information from. Mm-hmm. It's all Logan Paul.
Yeah.
How many viewers do we have right now? This 15.
Rest
my case.
Because you stopped talking about Seymour.
David Serrata said on Twitter, if you
who's that?
He works for the IV Times, I think, International Business Times. Did a lot of reporting on the tax bill late last year. But he's pointed out repeatedly that if you took all the money being paid to pundits,
you're not even on this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's just my voice.
Okay.
If you just took the money paid to like pundits and stuff on cable news to just talk about the same things repeatedly and invested that in actual investigative journalism, maybe that would be better spent than just. But somebody's watching all of this.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Well, people are getting what they want.
So
and that's what we. Yeah. That's
it's just like a feedback loop, essentially. So
it's like everyone says they want positive news, but they don't read the on our website they don't read the quote positive news. It's the traffic jam and the house fire. But anyway, now I'm depressed, and I guess we'll end on that note. Is there anything else you wanted to add? Any Seymour news? You have a habit, Ethan and I feel, and again, this is our opinion. You'll come on our program, you'll talk for an hour and 15 minutes, which is great. And then, like, tomorrow, there'll be some big announcement, or I'll read meeting minutes, like, Big Y is coming to Seymour. Is there anything at all you want to get out to them? Any news?
Nothing that I don't want to save until next Tuesday's Board of Selectmen meeting. Because, I would love...
Yeah, your agendas are like public comment, then, like, Selectmen's report, and there's just no way to... They're all so...
It's listed out exactly what's going to happen in the meeting. It's not a secret what we do.
But it doesn't say like Selectmen's report and here's the items I'll be hitting on. Poop on the greenway, dog poop on the greenway. It's just kind of general. It's hard. It's
my report, and it depends on kind of what's happened over the last couple of days, and that's what I have to let the Selectmen know and give them updates on things. So what's going on?
What are you going to tell them Tuesday? What's your report?
I'll primarily talk about the budget and where things stand and. Yeah, we still have about a $300,000 hole in our budget that we're going to need to work on closing. So I'll give them an update on that. And, so we have some retirements coming up in town. Our
police chief is.
Police chief. So that'll actually be as an agenda item Our town council will be coming in to talk to the Board of Selectmen. I'm going to invite the Board of Police Commissioners, and we're going to talk through the process of replacing the chief, so the mechanics of what the Board of Police
This
Commissioners
going to be a
has to
public
do.
discussion, or are you going into executive session?
It'll be in public.
Okay.
It'll be between the board and the town attorney, and then the chairman of the Board of Police Commissioners, assuming he can make it. If not, then I'll have the next night is the Board of Police Commissioners, so I'll go to that meeting then as well. But we just want to put the process out just to make sure everybody understands what needs to be done, who's responsible for what. Try to be as transparent as possible. This is something we haven't done in Seymour in close to 30 years, so we just want to make sure that we have it correct. Everybody's on the same page, and we move forward to be able to replace the chief by his retirement date of June 30th. Our town clerk.
This year.
Yep. Our town clerk is retiring Sue Barber at the end of February, so we'll be working on that. And then in our assessor's office, our assistant assessor Priscilla Altarelli, she's retiring as well this spring, so we'll be working on her replacement as well.
Okay. Well, and are you going to John Carpenter Night 2 at the Strand Theater February 10th, Saturday?
I will be unable to attend. I have a previous engagement that night. You roll your eyes.
They live and escape from New York.
But I promise I will
Mayor
call
Boughton
you.
will be there.
Mayor Boughton will be there probably. I will call you next Friday at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Can we make it Thursday?
And I will give you the announcement.
Oh, right. I forgot.
See, that's the thing. I give you teaser news, and it goes right away. Seymour.
I keep getting my your and your. I was just talking about Ethan. I think I got to go see a doctor. But all right.
If you go right down South Main Street, at the end of South Main Street is this town called Seymour. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to, swing by it sometime and see what's going on, we'd love to have you. I'll give you a little tour of the town. Maybe give you a Town of Seymour mug or a sweatshirt or something. Listen, there is a world outside Ansonia and Derby.
You could advertise $99 a week.
What I don't know. That's my father owns a business. I'm an indentured servant. Trust me.
Trust fund kid. All right.
Trust fund kid.
I want to thank Kurt Miller. I want to thank the 15 people who watched this, and Jen Magri for coming on and talking about. We're kidding around at the end, but I want to thank you guys for coming on.
No, always a pleasure to be here.
So for Ethan Fry and Seymour First Selectman Kurt Miller, I'm Eugene Driscoll, and we'll see you next time. And now Ethan will turn that off.